Happy New Year of the Dragon, everyone. Welcome to the APA Justice February monthly meeting. My name is Jeremy Wu. I thank all of you for speaking and joining us in today's meeting. I'll be moderating today's meeting with a lot of help from Vincent Wang and Professor Stephen Pei. We're honored and privileged to have Erica Morisugu from the White House to kick off the meeting today. Erica will share with us a review of the Year of the Rabbit in 2023 and what we may look forward to the Year of the Dragon in 2024. Let us warmly welcome Erica to start today's meeting. Erica, please take the floor and give us your remarks. Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you so much. Actually, Jeremy, Vincent, and Stephen, thank you for your breathtaking leadership in this space. I'm Erica Morisugu. Jeremy has alluded to the fact that I sit at the White House, and it's an honor to share this space with you all today. I serve as a Deputy Assistant to President Joe Biden and as the Senior Liaison to the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders communities at the White House, reporting to the White House Chief of Staff's component. And if you don't know what I do for a living, that's okay, because this is the first time this job has ever existed. I've had the honor of appearing before this wonderful organization before, by Zoom mostly, but sometimes in person, which is always a treat. I'm joined by my colleagues and friends, Ting Wu, who you heard from two meetings ago, and Barbara Holston, who recently joined my team as a detailee from the Department of Defense. So again, thank you. And happy Lunar New Year Eve, everybody. I hope everyone has a wonderful upcoming year. And in the spirit of the Year of the Dragon, that you're blessed with prosperity, luck, and success. Now, before we completely leave the Year of the Rabbit or Cat, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on all that we've accomplished, both as a community and as an administration that's committed to the community. So under the Biden-Harris administration, the White House and the White House Initiative on AAN and HPI staff have met with Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander leaders and hosted events in roughly 36 states in the past calendar year and territories in all 10 federal regions. So in less than 2 years, White House and the initiative staff have traveled to roughly half of the country with plans to connect with community members in additional states and the remaining U.S. Pacific Islander territories in 2024. Last year, we hosted the inaugural Mental Health Summit focused on improving equity and access to behavioral health care for Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities. The White House Initiative on ANHPIs and the White House launched a series of in-person regional economic summits outside the Beltway. So we've connected thousands of community members with federal resources through summits in Philadelphia, Chicago, New York City, Seattle, Honolulu, and most recently, Atlanta. And this is our way of advancing the President's Investing in America agenda, because we need to do everything in our power to expand economic opportunity and provide hardworking entrepreneurs with the tools and resources that they need to thrive. We also published the first ever national strategy to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for AN and HPI communities. And this is being implemented through our interagency working group of senior level executive branch officials with over, I think, pretty close to 4 dozen executive branch agencies and White House officials and independent agencies. Most recently, President Biden welcomed members of the President's Advisory Commission on AN and HPI to the White House. We hired new permanent staff to support the initiative and the commission, and the President also issued an executive order that renews the commission through September 2025. President Biden also issued the first ever proclamation recognizing Anapeasy Week to honor the role that Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions have in empowering generations of AN and HPI students. If you can't tell, we're incredibly proud of what has been accomplished for our communities, by our communities, and with our communities so far. But we also know that there's still more to do in ensuring equity, justice, opportunity, and safety for AN and HPIs. And so we're going to keep striving to make progress for our communities. And that's why in 2024, we're going to continue advancing the President's Investing in America agenda and setting a goal of increasing the share of federal contracting dollars going to small businesses owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals by 50%. We're going to continue to make long overdue investments in infrastructure, unleash a clean energy and manufacturing boom, and create good paying jobs. We're also going to continue to lower costs for American families by strengthening our supply chains, cracking down on junk fees, and lowering prescription drug costs. Now, I do want to break for a moment to turn to some issues that I've spent a lot of time with you. I've known Dr. Wu for many, many, many years. He actually used to be my client when I was his pro bono counsel before his second of 4 retirements. He's in his 4th retirement, but I haven't seen him slow down yet. Let me start with research security. This is an area that this particular organization, the convening of this cohort coalition that you've built and who's represented here, has been at the forefront of keeping this issue at the forefront. You should know that the Biden-Harris administration remains committed to making sure that the U.S. government assiduously avoids basing our policies or processes on prejudice, including those that could fuel anti-Asian sentiments or xenophobia in relation to research security. We're committed to affirming the integral role of AAN and HPIs and people of all national origins in this country, and supporting collaboration with international partners when it is in our interest. The White House is aware of the perceptions, biases, and stereotypes that efforts to implement research security policies may unintentionally reinforce. The federal government continues to collaborate with researchers and research institutions to develop guidance that will, 1, protect America's security and openness, understanding that basic research needs the global community to thrive. 2, the guidance is going to be clear to researchers. And 3, we're going to ensure that the guidance does not fuel or reinforce xenophobia or prejudice. We're going to continue to engage with America's remarkable and diverse community of researchers and institutions. And I see some of you here on the phone, on the Zoom too. And I'm not going to embarrass you by calling you out, but I appreciate your partnership and your trust and your faith that we're going to get this right to ensure that the guidance upholds these core values. Now, onto the People's Republic of China. Although the United States and the PRC are in competition, we remain committed to maintaining open lines of communication and responsibly managing that competition. We're keenly aware that the United States and the PRC are economically interdependent and share interests in addressing transnational problems and reducing the risk of conflict. We also expect that the PRC will be a major player on the world stage for the foreseeable future. So that means that even as we compete, we want to find ways to live alongside one another. So last year, we launched a period of intensive diplomacy. It was an all-hands-on-deck effort across the cabinet, spanning the full range of our relationship with the PRC. We were direct about our differences, including PRC support for Russia's war against Ukraine and cross-strait issues. We also used our meetings to find space to coordinate on issues where our interests overlap, culminating in the summit between President Biden and President Xi in Woodside, California, where we made progress on 3 major issues. First, President Biden and President Xi restarted counter-narcotics cooperation. Second, they announced the resumption of military-to-military communication that had been frozen for more than a year. Third, the leaders also announced a new dialogue aimed at managing the risks of artificial intelligence. We know that our community has real and valid concerns about being impacted here stateside by tensions in the U.S.-PRC relationship, and that's why we also continue to double down on our efforts to protect the Chinese American and all AAN and HPI diasporas here at home. As the president has repeatedly said, hate must have no safe harbor in America. And this administration is going to continue to combat hate-fueled violence in whatever form it takes. We're committed to providing our community with the safety and opportunity and justice that every American deserves. We do this work at the direction of a vice president and a vice president who see us and hear us and value us. And above all, recent events from the pandemic to the spike in deadly violence and hate to the Maui wildfires remind us of how critical it is, even life and death, to have a government that's responsive to community. And that's the responsibility that my team, along with the White House Initiative and other components in the White House, have worked to honor for the last 3 years. But we know that we can't do any of this, we shouldn't do any of this, and we don't want to do this without the engagement and activism and partnership with community leaders like you all. So this is a thank you to you for all that you do for our communities And a big mahalo nui loa for letting me share this space with you all today. And gung hee pat choi. Jeremy, Dr. Wu, back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica, for your remarks, and please stay along with Ting and Barbara, and then join us. I think you'll find the rest of the meeting to be very informative and useful. Ashley, Patrick, and Clay, let me at this point turn the floor over to you. I don't know in what order you would like to talk, but would you give us a quick update on the appeals court ruling, as well as any other comments that you may have and further developments that you may have? How should we do this, Patrick, Ashley, and Clay?
Clay, did you want to go first and provide some background? I'm also happy to do that. Up to you.
Okay, I'll start with some background. If you don't know, Florida passed a alien land law last May, I believe, and then we immediately challenged the law, filing a lawsuit in the Northern District of Florida. And we immediately moved for a preliminary injunction just because of the harm that it's been doing to all the Chinese buyers, as well as the property registration requirements. Unfortunately, the district court judge did not agree to our motion. We had a hearing in July 18th. I believe I remember that date because it's also my birthday. The bad news came in September because the judge did not agree to us, and we, of course, immediately appealed to the 11th Circuit. We also tried to expedite the appeal process. Fortunately, we got good news, I believe 2 weeks ago, that the 11th Circuit agreed to our expedition request. And then last Thursday, we got news from the appeals court that they granted a partial preliminary injunction on the law, specifically for 2 of the plaintiffs. They were would-be buyers. They already signed contracts to buy properties in Florida, but because of the law, they were facing criminal exposure and liabilities in Florida just for buying a residential property. So that part of the law have been stopped specifically for those 2 plaintiffs. But the exact effect of the law, I believe, I will let Ashley and Patrick explain. I believe we're also going to have a hearing scheduled in the week of April 15th on our full motion for preliminary injunction. We will have a different set of judges to rule on that motion, and we will, I think, at least we will be in Miami for the hearing, and I think local organizations are also planning to hold rallies to support this cause. So go ahead, Ashley and Patrick.
Thanks, Clay. So just following up on the background that Clay provided, we had appealed to the Court of Appeals in the 11th Circuit from the district court's denial of our motion for a preliminary injunction. And for those of you who are not lawyers, that would mean that the law would be halted while the entire lawsuit is pending, and litigation can take many years. And the district court, as Clay said, denied that. So we're appealing, and that appeal is ongoing. That's the appeal on which we're going to have oral argument the week of April 15th. And then separately, we asked the Court of Appeals on an emergency basis to enjoin the law just for the duration of the appeal, because sometimes it takes the appeals court many months to hear the case, to write its decision. And we said, we asked the court, please just enjoin this law at least while the appeal is pending, and please make that decision very quickly. We filed that motion last August, and we were very surprised that it took the court this long to issue a decision. But But we are very grateful for the decision that it issued. As Clay said, it prevents the state from enforcing the law against two of our plaintiffs. And although technically the injunction is very narrow, it is a really good sign for us because the court's reasoning was that the plaintiffs are substantially likely to prevail on their argument that Florida's law is preempted or trumped by federal law. But there's already a federal statute that regulates real estate purchases that potentially implicate national security. And the court said, it's likely that this Florida law conflicts with that federal law, and under the Constitution, the federal law has to control. And for that reason, the Florida law is very likely unconstitutional. And our panel was ideologically diverse. So this is also a very good sign for our case. And the next step, as Clay said, is oral argument in April. But it's really a very important victory for our clients and a very, very good sign for the litigation going forward. Patrick, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just add that, as Ashley said, the decision only applies to two of our plaintiffs, but the legal theory that the court adopted, if it's embraced ultimately by the appeals court, is one that would, those arguments would reach many other people who are contending with the hardships posed by this law. So yeah, just as Ashley and Clay said, we take it as a good sign. We don't know whether we'll have the same panel of judges when the case is heard in kind of the full appeal in April. But we do hope that this group and all the organizations that are represented here are looking ahead to that April date, and the argument will be in Miami in terms of the current schedule. So our sights are set on that next step at this point in time. But thanks to everyone who's here for all the ways they've supported the litigation so far.
Yeah, I just want to add 2 points here. Following up on Patrick's comments, there are a lot of organizations behind this effort. I want to mention Queen Emanuel, a big litigation firm that steps in as a pro bono lawyers, and also Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. I also want to give a shout out to FAJA. It's a newly organized Asian American justice organizations in Florida in the wake of SB 264. They did a lot of political outreach and resource gathering for this case. My second point is a legal observation. The Court of Appeals, the 3 judges relied on the federal preemption argument, which is good for us because it could potentially apply to other states. For example, Texas and other states are considering similar laws. If the Court of Appeals are really going to rely on this argument that saying for a state to regulate real estate transactions involving foreigners, that means, if Florida is preempted, then other states probably are preempted as well. So I think all the Chinese Americans can basically show this piece of opinion to the state legislators saying, we're not allowed to do this. You're being preempted. So you could have a far-reaching implications to other states. Thank you.
Thank you, Clay, Ashley, and Patrick. This is great news, and it's gratifying to see your hard work has paid off, although there is still a lot of work ahead. So please come back and tell us more good news as they develop. At this point, let me read Nisha's message. It says, sincere apologies, but KPAC won't be able to join today's monthly call due to a conflict. I wanted to just uplift the letter Chair Chu, Senator Hirano, and Representative Meng sent to leadership about concerns related to the appropriations language reinstating the China Initiative. Also, if you would like to share, KPAC members met last week with OSTP, which is Office of Science and Technology Policy Director, which is part of the White House, Arita Pabrika, where we had very productive discussions about research security. So finally, glad to see the court halting of the Florida land law, and also want to wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. So that was a message from Nisha and KPAC. With that, Gisela, please take the floor to give us an update from Asian American Scholar Forum.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And first, ASF wants to just give thanks to KPAC Chair Chu, Representatives Mang, Hirona, and other champions for opposing the reinstatement of the China Initiative, which, as Jeremy mentioned, was featured recently on NBC News. And also to the Biden administration for ending the misguided initiative and release of NSPM 33 to harmonize disclosures and add an anti-discriminatory clause, which ultimately benefits all communities. We are so appreciative of these efforts. ASF, along with our partners at APA Justice, AJC, and other coalition members that had worked to end the China Initiative, continue to oppose any reinstatement, recently leading 50 organizations. And ASF will continue to monitor this bill as we reach the conferencing stage and keep both our partners and community members aware of how they can support us in this effort, particularly those who are most impacted. Second, ASF will be convening our next annual event as a symposium touching on many emerging technologies on July 27th, where we will present awards to Asian American pioneers who have helped shape the lives of everyday Americans through their brilliance and innovations, a high school competition for students to lift up Asian American history, especially our Asian American pioneer innovators. We will also be welcoming top scientists in AI, life science, and other emerging technologies, and invite many of my colleagues here and the community to join us. ASF believes that as we shape policies and regulations in these emerging technologies, it is critical to also hear from the voice of Asian American scholars, scientists, and researchers. So I'll be sending the information to Jeremy and APA Justice with regards to our conference. This conference is really about a celebration of Asian American scholar excellence and a shift away from the environment of scapegoating. It's important that as a community, we can rejoice, celebrate, and recognize their tremendous contributions to our country and their unique human stories as leaders, parents, and proud members of our local communities. As we welcome in the new year and move to celebrate Lunar New Year in our community, we are just so proud of the growth and mobilization of the Asian American scholar community, which would not have been possible without the support of many of our partners, including friends at APA Justice, who've been so supportive of the creation of a scholar nonprofit, AJC, ACLU, and so many of the speakers today. We know how important representation is and appreciate all the public servants in this room working to lift up the Asian American scholar community voice with ASF. ASF is also proud to have accomplished a tremendous feat in the last year, securing a seat at the table. Our annual impact report that we shared includes many of our accomplishments, meeting with the Biden administration, Congress, federal agencies, and hosting roundtables between federal agency leaders and vice presidents of research of top universities to improve the climate on our campus. We continue to advocate for the rights of Asian Americans and scholars, educate the community, and support individual cases. So much of this work happens with many of our partners here behind the scenes, listening to stories of people on the ground and seeing how we can make sure that their stories are not just collateral damage, but that on a high level, we can change many of these policies that are directly impacting them. We launched the Pioneer Project and became a task force member for the National Asian Pacific American Smithsonian Museum. And our launch was shared by the National Science Foundation Director and reached over 18,000 viewers. This is just an example of how we're trying to shift away from this criminalization of Asian American scientists and instead rejoice in many of their accomplishments. As ASF continues to work and gather this invisible history of Asian Americans, I ask many of you here today to work with us in collecting archived documents for the Asian American scholar community. We want their human stories as scientists, researchers, and scholars to be a part of a future museum, and ASF is going to make sure this is a top priority for us. We have also heard many issues on the ground. As we try to make these long-term changes, we also understand there are many urgent issues here today. We were alarmed, for example, to hear about numerous incidents of students of Chinese descent being stopped at the border once again over the holidays in December and January and interrogated. And we're working with students to provide them with support and resources, as well as ensuring that our Congress members are kept aware of many of these incidents, and also working with many of our partners here today to see how collectively we could provide them with support. We also continue to monitor the impacts of a Florida law that recently went into effect, which restricts Florida's public colleges and universities from hiring researchers and graduate students from several countries of concern that include China and Iran. We provided background on last month's call and prepared an explainer that I'll lift up to Jeremy as an additional resource for the community. We want to make sure folks know that we're here to listen to your stories, and ASF is working on an impact assessment specifically for professors, and also reaching out to many of our colleagues that work directly with students such as NAFSA. So thank you all so much again for your support for the Asian American scholar community. We hope to only continue to grow in 2024, but are just so appreciative of every single one of you in helping this community have a voice.
Thank you, Gisela. I also want to recognize that Joanna is here, but she's passing her time, yielding back the time to the meeting. So thank you, Joanna. And we do have a full schedule, so that's very much appreciated. At this point, Laura, welcome. And please take the floor for up to 10 minutes and tell us about the Quincy Institute.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and all of the prior speakers. This has been really encouraging and uplifting. And Gisela, that's a very, very tough act to follow, all that you've done. So the Quincy Institute is a relatively new think tank. We're 4 years old. We have a global focus, but one of our core, if not the core area of our work, is on the US-China relationship. Our founding principle or theory is that the US has come to rely too much on the use of military force. And so we are looking to promote an international relations theory called restraint, which calls for use of force only in cases where vital national interests are at stake, and otherwise we need to learn to exercise the diplomatic muscle more, once again. So as I said, we focus on the entire world. Oh, thank you, Jeremy. I actually was gonna change up and just give you a link to our website.
Would you like to do it directly?
Sure. I will just, I was just gonna tell folks, you could find out more about us.
I shared the link already.
Oh, I didn't.
We're talking about share screen. Sorry.
Oh, I just shared the website link if anyone wants to join to focus on that. That will give you a good sense, I think, of, so we are a standard think tank in that we are peopled with experts in US-China security relations from a kind of hard security perspective, and also more from a tech and trade perspective. The two areas that we focus on most prominently right now really are senior level crisis prevention and management. So we were very pleased with the top level, the reinitiation of top level dialogue. We think that the crisis prevention mechanisms need to go a lot further than that. And our colleague Michael Swain has been leading a bilateral US DoD affiliated, usually former DoD officials, and PLA connected dialogue for about 20 years on crisis prevention and management. So that's one area we're very, very actively focused on. And another, as I said, is trade, tech, and environment. I'm very glad that Sandy Shan is on this call as well. We have been working to identify positive areas of cooperation, where cooperation is vital between the United States and China. And obviously that's manifold areas from economy, development, finance, and probably most obvious climate, for proactive engagement and not just sort of parallel activity to meet the needs of the moment. So we conduct scholarship, but we also engage at permissible levels in direct advocacy with Congress. And I know this is no surprise to you all, but in this Congress, there have been about 600 bills initiated, almost every one of them pretty hostile in intent toward China, and in terms of focusing on a threat posed by or an alleged threat posed by China to U.S. national interests. One of the few bills that is positive, I saw Jeremy had highlighted in the mail that went around previously, is restoration of the Fulbright program, which does not require an act of Congress to reinitiate that program. But it would be, I think, very helpful for groups that are inclined to do so to lean in proactively in support of that, to help show our friends at the White House that there is indeed a lot of support for increasing U.S. government support for resumption of the Fulbright program. So we engage in scholarship, we engage in some direct advocacy, and we engage extensively in communications. We are probably about half scholarship and half direct communications. We also have an online publication called Responsible Statecraft that publishes about 1,000 pieces of journalism a year, journalism and analysis, some from our staff, some also from outside scholars that are relevant to our overall mission, again, of promoting this idea of a less militarized and more diplomacy-forward engagement with the world, but with China in particular. One of the things that we did just before the meeting of President Biden and Xi, Jeremy mentioned in his introduction, his kind introduction, that we had organized a coalition call that several folks in this call were on to try and bring together people from different sectors who have a stake in a workable, decent U.S.-China relationship. It was our observation that there's a lot, obviously very, very broad sectors of American civil society that do want just that do want a decent, workable relationship. And yet so much of what we see in the media and coming out of Congress, and also, unfortunately, often from the White House, is more of a kind of a nature that is pointing to China as a threat or China as a danger, if not a threat. So what we look to do is to bring together some of those different societies, academic, national security, climate, farm, agriculture, et cetera, to see if we could find some shared area of endeavor that might help promote a more positive agenda, a more positive awareness that there are, in fact, very large parts of civil society that are interested in and invested in a positive relationship. Out of that meeting grew this letter that Jeremy referenced, calling on the two presidents to really engage in a much more concerted effort to strengthen the bilateral relationship. We also held a half-day-long conference with foreignpolicy.com, which, for those of you not in the sort of foreign policy wonk space, is one of the main platforms for Washington thinkers on U.S. foreign policy. We held a conference with them trying to reframe or at least ask some different questions about the U.S.-China relationship. We tried to set up panels on economy, on national security, on trade and technology that really tried to sharpen or heighten the contradiction between this sort of more alarmist view or a zero-sum take and our perspective, which again is one that leans more in on cooperation and diplomacy. And so I commend you to perhaps watching that series. If you're interested, you can see that on our website. It was some very high-level, very excellent conversations that I think did ask different questions. It was quite different than the normal tenor of U.S.-China sort of commentary that you would see. So we also engage in investigative journalism as well as our publishing platform. We look often at the sources of influence in U.S. foreign policy making. And so we look often at foreign government funding of think tanks, as well as arms corporate funding of think tanks and news outlets, and try to at least raise questions about whether those sources of financial support may in fact be impacting some of the analysis, commentary, and reportage that comes out. I think maybe I will leave it at that. I'm not sure where I'm at in time, Jeremy, but there's tons of great analysis and information on this channel here. But I don't want to short circuit. But I do want to really encourage all of you to think of us as an ally, absolutely, and hopefully a source of useful analysis and information to you, particularly again if you are concerned about the kind of hard security front, which I know is often at the leading edge of why people are claiming that we must view China in this kind of zero-sum competitive frame. So on our website, we have several pieces of very in-depth analysis, again, on the US-Taiwan-China relationship, paths to conflict, paths to preventing it, on a more constructive agenda for a diplomatic framework for the US-China relationship, et cetera. So I commend you to look at the resources there. And then finally, would just leave you with where Congress is, again, with these 600 bills that are largely hostile, cutting across almost every committee within the US Congress. We found that what we really need to go back to is very fundamental education on the One China policy. So a lot of what we're doing is really just trying to help educate members and staff about the role that policy has played in maintaining the peace and allowing for the growth and development of Taiwan for 45 years. And so, again, welcome partnership from any and all on this call in helping with that rather large educational task in Congress and elsewhere. So thank you. Delighted to be here. Wish all of you a Happy New Year and look forward to working closely with any and all of you.
Laura, thank you. And then please join the Q&A and discussion session at the end of the meeting. And then I frequently mention this, and that is we have a 1-hour meeting every month, but most of our activities really happen between the meetings. And this is where we encourage a lot of collaboration and joint activities. So we look forward to that. And anyone who's interested in connecting with the Quincy Institute, there should be a way to contact you, Laura, directly, and also indirectly through APA Justice. So
I will actually put our outreach coordinator's name here, and I should have also led by saying I am not a China expert. We have plenty of other people on staff, but we will love to send appropriate people to join in at every opportunity that exists, Jeremy. So thank you for that.
Right. With that, Min, welcome, and please take the floor for up to 10 minutes and tell us about U.S. Heartland China Association.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the APA Justice community for bringing us together. As Laura mentioned, there are a lot of familiar faces in this group, but for those of you who have not heard about the U.S. Heartland China Association, I'll do a very quick introduction. So are you guys seeing the slide yet?
Yes, here.
Okay, so the organization, Heartland China Association, actually was started by late Senator Alan Stevenson, Illinois, in early about 2005-ish, so almost 20 years old. The reason you haven't heard about it, because for a long time, it's very much a grassroots focus on the Midwest. But what they fundamentally believe, as our chairman, former Governor Missouri today believes, that it's really for the interest of the Heartland community, we want robust communities that's globally connected. And there are a lot of bridges to the world, and that's why certain communities thrive versus others. We have a lot of former governors, ambassadors in our network, former elected official, bipartisan in many ways. And so we work with them to build community connections. We were actually one of the first ones in 2020 that brought US-China people together. You recognize some familiar faces on there to talk about education. Then we work on actually public health, and there are a couple of examples. And overall, we are focused on developing programs that advance interests of the Heartland community. One of the first ones is agriculture. For the agriculture industry players, whether it's company or farmers, China is our #1 market. So it's essential that we stay engaged with China. Recently, you seen that Secretary Vilsack, USDA leader, met with his counterpart, Minister Tang, for the first time a few weeks ago in DC. So as we mentioned, the White House has done a lot of full court press to build bridges. So we're here to support our agriculture community. So they have the big market, continue to export. For a lot of people who don't know, China has 1/5 of world's population, but only 1/10 of the arable land. US is the opposite. We're the #1 agriculture producer. And so this is one area away from DC. We actually have launched 3 years now, annual agriculture roundtable. There's a picture from last year in St. Louis in April, when the Chinese side traveled over 3 provincial delegations traveled to St. Louis. And this year, the 4th US-China Agriculture Roundtable is actually going to be in China. So the delegation going to China in June, part will be hosted by Shandong province. So again, we focus on what is very important for our heartland community. But as part of the effort, we realize we're promoting people to change it at a very difficult time. Another thing we do is really provide resources for our heartland community leaders who really want to understand why China matters to my community. So this annual report, the 3rd one, you can download from our website as well. Really take the data about why China matters, from export to job created, to the Chinese Americans living in your state, to the Chinese student in your state, and what does it mean for our service export. So this is a valuable resource. We intentionally kept it very simple. And again, we were encouraged to share this with the broader community because this helps you engage with your stakeholders. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we don't do any lobbying. But for those who are reaching out to your local leaders, this is a great resource. Another thing I'll mention is that we have, along with the project, we also had virtual events inviting representatives from education, cultural, trade, and government across the Heartland state, talk about why China matters to them. So those are also valuable resources for you to look at. Another thing is we want to make sure the Heartland community continue to have resources to help our youth to be globally aware and understand the Chinese culture and the language. We learn from our community context that some states are defunding Chinese language learning. They are saying, hey, it's equivalent to promoting communist propaganda. And so to combat that, we actually launched our Heartland Chinese Teacher Award last year. So we recognized 10 teachers from Arkansas to Iowa to Kentucky to Oklahoma who are really working hard to make sure that we maintain a curiosity about the Chinese language and Chinese culture. So this is one thing that we really invite more people to collaborate to recognize the Chinese teachers in the community. And also we are in discussion with China Institute in New York City because they are planning to bring Chinese students to China this summer. They brought superintendent from New York State to China. We have a lot of students and university, communities in the Heartland don't have the opportunity. So we are partnering with large organizations on the coast to make sure that in the Heartland community in the States, those interests are supported. Finally, because the travel opened up, a lot of delegations are coming into the Heartland. We have welcomed quite a few provincial delegations, like the Vice Governor of Jiangsu, Vice Mayor Nanjing, came to St. Louis to gift the Dragon Boat. So we were really interested to see that on both sides, a lot of hesitation. On the Chinese side, they were worried about coming here, being locked up in a small black room in the customs. But for our delegation later, you will hear, and they're really worried about being held hostage in China. So there's a lot of fear about 3 years, no exchanges. Both sides are, the further apart, the stranger the other side looks. So that's one of the reasons we really believe that bring back changes are very important. And we were actually very fortunate that we were able to, with support for Ford Foundation, Luz Foundation, Carnegie Corporation New York, to actually create a very unique program to promote Yangtze River, Mississippi River city-to-city exchange around energy transition, climate change, and green economy. So as you can see, we have 6 mayors coming from 5 different states. They had a wonderful time visiting Hong Kong, Wuhan, Nanjing, Suzhou, Shanghai. But the interesting thing was that when they come back, they realized many of them were attacked for visiting the communist China. Even though they were there following Chuck Schumer's visit, feeling all the cabinet visit, actually a week after Governor Newsom's visit, still the overall poisoning of anything related to China is very deep in the local community. So we encourage this community here to really speak to your local elected official, because the mayor delegation showed us that they're very curious about China. They were wondering, what is this China about? And actually, one of the mayors specifically reached out to us. She said, I'm a new mayor. I want to understand what's behind this anti-Asia, anti-China sentiment. And actually, she said, I'm going to COP28 to talk about global climate collaboration. I've never been to China. So again, I think that curiosity, as Lorna knows, right now, a lot of politicians are mindset shut. They are ideologically committed. They're not open to any kind of collaboration. Well, we have elected officials, and they are actually curious, interested to learn. So I think that's where, with APA Justice, the education is very important. So with that, I will close my presentation, and thank you very much for learning about our organization, our work.
Thank you very much, Min. At this point, I think it's a great transition to Sandy. And Sandy, welcome. And please take the floor for up to 10 minutes and tell us about Justice is Global.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you everyone for giving us this opportunity to talk about our work. Is there any way that we can put up the slides that I prepared? Great, thank you, Stephen. So, hi everyone, my name is Sandy Shan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director of Justice is Global. We at Justice is Global organize everyday people to fight for policy changes that create an equitable and sustainable future. And for the past several years, we've been working to shift the dominant narratives that blame China for economic and social issues in the US. And these are the same narratives, as we know, that fuel anti-Asian racism. And what we found in our work is that ordinary people really desire for something that's better, not scapegoating, not zero-sum competition between the US and China, but a positive vision that could improve their lives. And we believe that US-China cooperation to address climate change is the positive vision people desire. How we know this was through having extended conversations called deep canvassing in communities that's susceptible to anti-China rhetoric. And the core of deep canvassing is building emotional connections and exchanging lived experiences on a particular issue. So in 2022, with a team of 21 canvassers, we had more than 600 conversations with folks in rural Wisconsin. Mind you, these are your ordinary folks, not policy wonks, not experts or academics. We talked to these folks about how a more cooperative US-China relationship could provide concrete and tangible benefits to their lives. And on this, actually, I wanted to seize this opportunity to thank Mingfan and the US Heartland China Association. A lot of the reports and research that you all put together on how China matters to the specific state, we actually generated great insights from some of these reports that you publish, and it's tremendously helpful for us to generate a high persuasion rate in our Deep Canvas project. So as you can see from the slides, almost 50% of people that we had a conversation with ended up moving away from narratives that vilify China and moving closer to our vision of cooperation and interdependence. I want to pause here and also emphasize that we achieved these results without shying away from valid criticisms of the Chinese government's human rights violations and crackdowns on pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, which means that people can understand that support for US-China cooperation around shared challenges can coexist with opposition to Chinese government's authoritarianism. And it was in these deep canvassing conversations that US-China climate cooperation emerged as the most compelling issue to inoculate ordinary people against anti-China narratives. So I encourage everyone to read the report. We published a very detailed report on how we achieved high persuasion rate through some of these conversations. And we also have very interesting stories that we collected from some of the phone conversations. Mind you, a lot of these folks are, even though on paper they have no connections whatsoever with China, but through our deep canvas conversations, we got to know like everyone actually, to some extent, is affected by the geopolitical tension right now we're seeing. So my colleague Valentina is going to share the report in the chat, so please give it a read. So we've been really, what we've been doing in the past few years and few months has been replicating the essence and success of these conversations at a larger scale to engage a wider audience through a piece of legislation promoting U.S.-China climate cooperation that is about to be introduced in Congress. We're working very closely with a number of organizations on this call, including Quincy and the 1990 Institute and the Serica Initiative. And I would say all of us would agree that this bill so far, given our current outreach, was very well received by a number of congressional offices, organizations across different sectors, as well as our members in AAPI communities. People are with us on this vision because, as we know, cooperation is just a solution that's urgently needed to fight climate crisis, and it's just so plainly obvious. And I think another reason for this positive reaction is that people are also growing increasingly tired of politicians pointing fingers and using languages like us versus them. People want to see our leaders to pivot to real solutions that address climate change and improve their lives. So I'm here today to invite all of you to join us to advocate for this positive vision, because this is not only something that's common sense, worth fighting for, but also something that AAPI communities have unique stakes in. We know that the time is of the essence to keep the Earth's temperature from reaching catastrophic levels, which means that we need to deploy technology at massive scale to transition our energy resources to renewable ones. And we cannot achieve that without cooperation between the United States and China, the world's two biggest technological and innovation powerhouses. And in fact, the US cannot build a green economy alone without China. I'm actually going to link an article for you to read on your own time on this specific point that I'm making. But the cooperation between the United States and China has yielded, as we know, groundbreaking scientific technological discoveries in the past that transcend borders and address shared global challenges. And these discoveries couldn't be possible without many of us in the AAPI community because of the critical role that we play in bridging these two countries. So I would say the fight for the future of our planet and US-China cooperation is the fight to protect AAPI communities, to make sure that our brilliant minds can work across borders and utilize our cross-cultural advantages and background freely to innovate and advance science and technology without fear. So in this way, I would say US-China climate cooperation is not a separate issue. It is an AAPI issue. And I'm deeply grateful to many of you on this call for your work in combating racial profiling and discrimination and promoting open science. And I invite all of you here to join efforts with us to chart the course for a positive vision for US-China climate cooperation by supporting the rollout of this bill. So as the bill is not being officially introduced, we can't really go into details about what's in it. So I'm just going to talk about it in broad strokes right now. So this bill is our roadmap for how US-China climate cooperation can deliver global common goods. It presents 3 areas where we think cooperation would be fruitful and impactful. And these 3 areas are climate finance, trade, and finally, technology sharing and transfer. So we have very specific policy recommendations in the bill that will fulfill some of these goals that we set out in this roadmap. Again, I can only talk about this bill in a broad terms, and if you're interested in, or if your organization is interested in endorsing, please reach out to me, and so we can have a talk about the specifics one-on-one. So in the coming months, Justice Global is going to work very closely with our partners in this call to engage our AAPI communities on the U.S.-China climate cooperation issue and this upcoming bill. And we need your help. So next slide, please. We need help with messaging communications that target AAPI audience. What this look like could be collecting personal stake stories that resonate with our audiences, identify good messengers from our communities that can spread the word. And it could also look as simple as doing some translation work. We will also be circulating a organizational sign-on letter later on, and we will also be hosting community events and so on to engage our AAPI audience. So if you're interested in providing support, you can indicate your interest by filling out a Google form that my colleague Valentina is going to drop in the chat. Once you fill it out, one of us in the coalition will reach out to you and we can start from there. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with every single one of you.
Thank you, Sandy. Wonderful report, and we will also share the slides in the next newsletter. And I'm glad to see the links showing up in the chat, and I think that would be also shared in the newsletter, especially about how to join. Our next meeting, monthly meeting, will be held on Monday, March 4th, starting at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time. So I think we have come to the conclusion of today's meeting, and I want to thank all of you very much. And again, a reminder that much of the interactions and collaborations actually happen between monthly meetings. So let's stay in touch, and we'll share the information and make sure that everybody got connected. And with that, let me say that the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.